Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to another edition of the Bendigo Bank MCDFNL Footy Show for another week. Fantastic to be joining you once again here on the MCDFNL website. Sean Kelly's my name. Joining me as always, Sam Gowers, my co-host. Sammy, welcome back, mate.
Thanks, mate. Glad to be here after a big round one.
No Scott Carey this week, given the flick. Viewers were down this week, so we just thought we'd try it, having Scott not on the panel, and just see if we can get some sort of semblance of viewership back.
Yeah, he detracted from the show last week. Good to see him gone.
He did indeed. Let's jump straight into it, because you don't want to hear us prattle on about other blokes all day. You want to hear about what happened in the MCDFNL last weekend and this weekend. So, going to go through the scores from each of the senior footy games. Then we're going to have our three talking points for the week that we debuted last week to great fanfare as well. Very, very well received.
Good reception, yeah.
Very good reception. We'll have our three talking points from the week after that. Then we'll have a look at this week's games in the MCDFNL. So we'll start with a look at last week's results up on the screen. At the moment, Avoca taking on Denali, and it was Avoca kicking the only two goals of the final quarter to get them over the line against Denali. Avoca 11-16-82, defeating the Eagles 11-10-76. Goal kickers for Avoca, Hayden Slater's debut netted him 3 goals and 2 each to Henningsen, Carter and Suckling. And for Denali, their multiple goal kickers, Bradley Shod with 3 and Bellinger and Whitcamp with 2 each. Best for Avoca, Xavier Slater, Henningsen, Howe, Hayden Slater, Walton and Carter. And for Denali, Campbell, Laird, Whitcamp, Hancock, Shoddy and Chris Wright. Lexington, an impressive win against Campbell's Creek last weekend, 18-13, 121 to Creek 8-5-53. Lachlan Murray leading the MCDFNL goal kicking at the moment. There's a phrase I didn't think I'd say too much this year, with 5 goals in the opening round. Jacob Spalding booted 3, as did Scott Clark for Lexington, Justin White and Ash Davies with 2 each for the Tiggies. 3 to Mark Ashmore for Campbell's Creek and 2 to Anthony Taylor with their multiples on the weekend. Best for Lexington, Scott Clark, Templeton, Michael Smith, Lockie Murray, Nigel Reid and Nick Spalding. And for Campbell's Creek, Slater, Cartledge, Greenwood, Daniel Climax, Shannon Berryman and Jim Bogue. Harcourt taking on Trentham, and good to see Harcourt back on the winners list to start off the season. Pretty impressive fashion too, 12-16-88 to Trentham 8-4-52. Joel Smith in his first game back in Harcourt colours, 3 goals leading the way for the Lions on the weekend, alongside Chris Stone, who also booted 3, 2 to Sam Gale as well. Trentham got 3 goals from Ross Maloney and 2 from young Cal Wellings on the weekend. Best players for Harcourt, Chaplin, Collinson, McLean, McMurtry, Ward and Pollock. And for Trentham, it was Cal Wellings, Maloney, Smith, Elliot Drew, Naden and Chris Whelan. Sammy.
Natty Bialba getting up over Royal Park 9-4, 58 to 6-5, 41. 9 individual goal kickers for the Swans, 2 each to Pring and Noonan for the Tigers. Best for Natty is Jardine, Mortlock, Cameron, Perry, Ross and Douglas. And for Royal Park, Jim Sutherland, James Linderback, Michael Noonan, Jake Pring, Chris Morley and Will Short. Maryborough Rovers, shocking Talbot, 18-11, 119 to 13-17, 95. Goals for the Rovers, 4 to McLean, 3 to Goreski and Ryan and 2 to Dion Hedger. For Talbot, 3 to Wise, 2 to Brendan Shine, and 2 each to Trent Barras and Luke Kemp as well. Best for Rovers, Hedger, Ryan, McLean, Hedger again, Fraser and Fletcher. And for Talbot, Tom Carroll, Brendan Shine and Liam Belcher. And in Sunday's game, Malden 11-16-82 defeated Newstead 7-10-52. 3 goals to Sean Birchall and 2 to Josh Hutchinson. For Malden, 3 to Con. For Newstead, 2 to Entwistle. And Malden's best, Bryce Roberts, Nick McKnight, Michael Mulholland, Hayden Kelly, Jamie Cox and Luke Davey. And for Newstead, Kirby, Beams, Brown, Long, Pearson and Entwistle.
Very good work by you, Sammy, there, running through all of the results. And of course, the Navarre Carisbrook result was the 7th game that was played the week before. We covered that off last week. If you missed that, go back in time for 7 days. Have a look at last week's show. It was an absolute ripper. Don't you worry about that. One thing we debuted on that show last week that we'll keep rolling with throughout the season on the Footy Show was our 3 talking points of the week, which we'll do every week. We're going to start off talking point number 1 this week, Sam Gowers. The Maryborough Rovers win over Talbot. You mentioned the word shocking.
I did. Bit of a shock, well, to me anyway. I tipped Talbot to win this one, and Rovers got up in the end. Talbot threw away a 10-point lead at 3/4 time to let the Magpies in, And yeah, I think it would have shocked a few followers at MCDFNL footy.
Probably not too many within the Maryborough Rovers camp, though, because we even saw it last year that a lot of teams said that when they played the Maryborough Rovers, it was physically the hardest game of footy they had to play throughout the year. We saw that improvement last year, and it was really good that it manifested for the Rovers against Talbot on the weekend. Talbot are in no doubt that they believe that obviously Rovers got over them in the last quarter, but they believe that with a couple of things done differently that they should have won the game. Having said that, take nothing away from Rovers, who were fantastic on the weekend, got their season off to a good start, and looking at the fixture, it's maybe not so kind to them this week because they take on Navarre, but then after that they've got Royal Park and Trentham. Royal Park obviously a big game with the local derby going on there on the Sunday, and it's one of those games where it doesn't matter where the clubs are on the ladder, it's always a close one. Then taking on Trentham the next week, they could, with a bit of luck, go 2-2 or even 3-1 to start the season.
Yeah, absolutely. They've chucked in a couple of players this year to add a bit of polish. They get Braden Goreski back from Carnham Linton, and you never know what might happen for them.
Exactly right. Talking point number 2, the Newstead Football Club. Are they on the decline in 2015?
Well, we saw them go down to Maldon on Sunday, like we said, but as we said last week, they've had a lot of players going out the door this season, and a lot of important players for them too. I'm sure Nathan Webster will be giving the youth a game still.
Yes,
and
be interesting to see if he plays himself.
Yeah, just try and develop a young side that might challenge a few sides this year, but I'd say no doubt we're going to see Newstead slide down the ladder a little bit this year.
Big game for Newstead this week, taking on Campbell's Creek as well on Sunday. It'll be a really good determinant of where Newstead are at.
Absolutely. Campbell's Creek will be no easy beats this season,
Not
I
at
don't
all.
think. So, yeah, that should be a really, really good game.
Talking point number 3 revolves around the Royal Park Football Netball Club. A lot of hype around Bushy pre-season. Saw a bit of it on Saturday, however, they went down to Natty Bialaba. They would have wanted that one because Carisbrook this week under lights is going to be a tough assignment too, and Bushy don't really want to start zip 2.
No, they don't. There was a lot of talk pre-season about Bushy, but like we said, they've got a lot of new players, and as we know, it might take a while for the side to gel together.
You had a look at Bushy on the weekend, obviously came up against Natty, low scoring style of game as well. How did they look?
Yeah, pretty scrappy round 1 game, few rusty skills on display, but like I said, Bushy are going to take a while to get used to how one another play. But I think blokes like Mick Noonan and Pring are going to add a lot of polish to their midfield, which is probably what they were lacking last year.
Yeah, very good work by you. Some interesting talking points coming up there throughout the week. If you think of any talking points from each week's action that you think we should be discussing here on the MCDFNL Footy Show, feel free to drop us an email. Drop it to me, Shaun at aflgoldfields.com.au, and we will obviously we'll bring up to ourselves, and then we might have a fan talking point as well each week. So if there's someone out there that you want to put in it a little bit, or if you've got a genuine talking point, if there's a topic that you think needs to be raised within the MCDFNL, let us know and we'll bring it up on your behalf. We'll even keep it anonymous. We mightn't say who sends them in each week, just so there's no anything comes back down the line and there's no backhanders being delivered.
Unless it's someone we think should be dobbed in.
Correct, and then you will get every bit of what's coming to you. Let's have a look at round 2 this week in the MCDFNL. Big round, of course, ANZAC Day round, and we do commemorate all of the soldiers and the diggers that gave their lives in the ultimate sacrifice, fighting for our country on the 100th anniversary of the Gallipoli landing. So that will be first and foremost in our minds throughout this weekend. 4 ANZAC Day games to have a look at this Saturday, Sammy, starting out at Denali, with Denali taking on Harcourt.
Yeah, this should be a really good game. Denali chucked away a lead last week to go down to Avoca. Harcourt were really impressive in their first opener, so we'll see how they go. It's an interesting game.
Harcourt, that bit more polish in their forward line, bringing in those guys from Campbell's Creek, Sean Smith, Joel Smith. Adam Pollock was really good in the ruck on the weekend for Harcourt as well. Just gives them that extra bit of dimension. Last year they were relying on Chris Stone to kick them winning scores. This year he's got a foil there in Joel Smith. Yeah,
it's going to be interesting to see how defenders line up against this Harcourt forward line, because they've got a lot of height with Stone, Smith and Pollock all down there.
Yep.
So yeah, I think they'll stretch a few defences this season.
And Denali got some good performances from some of their younger players and new players last week. However, one of them missing this week, Justin Laird, of course, the under-17 leading goal kicker from 2 years ago. Back at Denali on the weekend, pretty impressive performance, but he'll be missing for the next 4 after a visit to this very room on Wednesday night this week.
It's disappointing for Denali to lose Justin. He's a promising young player, but like you said, gone for 4 weeks for rough conduct. So that leaves a big hole for them.
It does indeed. Which way are you going with this one, please?
I'm going to go with the Lions.
Yeah, Harcourt for me as well. Impressed by their round one form and just feel that they're that little bit more advanced in their preparation and where they're at this year than Denali. Maryborough Rovers are taking on Navarre this week. The Rovers coming off a huge high last week with that win that we spoke about before. Pretty tough ask to come up against the reigning premiers and a team that have won their last 23 games on the back of that. But one of the teams that we spoke to last year was Navarre, and they said that the day that after they played Rovers, it was the most physical game and the hardest game they've played all season.
Yeah, a few sore bodies after that game last year. Rovers can carry all the morale they want into this one, but I can't see them getting over the Grasshoppers. Navarre will just be too good.
Yeah, I think so as well. Obviously, Navarre having that week off to rest a couple of sore bodies after their pretty physical and pretty bruising opening round encounter against Carisbrook. Don't be surprised to see this one fairly close for the first quarter and a half, because as you said, the Rovers will take a lot from last week into this game and they'll come out firing early, but I just think Navarre will end up wearing them down towards the end of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, good luck to Rovers. Be interesting to see how they go against the competition's benchmark.
Yeah, exactly right. It'll be a good benchmark of where the Rovers are at this year. Night ANZAC Day footy once again upon us this year. 2 venues this year. Firstly, probably match of the round for mine so far. Carisbrook taking on Royal Park under the lights at Royal Carisbrook. Should be a very interesting encounter, Sammy.
Should be indeed. Royal Park were good last week, and like we said, they will gel as the weeks come, but Carisbrook were very impressive against Navarre, I thought, so I think they might get the points here.
Our man playing?
Our man's back.
Any feedback from the wedding photo on the show last week?
Yeah, a few people liked it, a few people enjoyed it. Don't know if the big man enjoyed it himself, but he'll be back in the goal square for the Redbacks.
We need to be talking about him kicking goals rather than drinking beers, so good luck with him. Royal Park, as we said, they don't want to go zip too. I reckon they'll come out with this one, have a real big crack at it. Had that first game last week to get to know each other, as you mentioned a little bit. They've had 3 or 4 practice matches and some real good bonding sessions as well. I've just got a little bit of a feeling about this one for Royal Park as well. Liam Cunningham, big loss in that Carisbrook forward line. However, said that, bring Nath back into the side does create obviously someone else to take the marks in that forward line. I don't know. I reckon Carisbrook will win, but I've got a feeling this one might go all the way down to the wire.
Yeah, it should be an absolute cracker.
Second game under lights this week, out at sunny old Trentham. It's going to be a nice night out at Trentham on Saturday night. ANZAC Day, fantastic last year. They did a really good job last year on ANZAC Day Trentham, so doing it again under lights this year. This year, though, taking on Talbot in what will be a really good indicator for where both clubs are at in a very, very interesting game of football.
Yeah, I really don't know which way to go with this one, to be honest, Sean. It should be an interesting game. Talbot maybe have a little bit more experience, a bit more polish, but travel down to Trentham at night in the cold, anything could happen. Well,
I think the forecast for 12 degrees during the day on Saturday or something like that, so by the time it gets to 7:30, you halve that temperature, and then when you're out at Trentham, you halve it again. So, Sherm, don't worry about oiling up the shoulders and the muscles to make them look good this week, mate. Maybe put the long sleeves on because you are going to need them out there, and that's one thing that could obviously work in Trentham's favour. They're used to those conditions. They're used to the lights out there. Talbot haven't seen them before. It's just those little things sometimes that can come into play, and Trentham are a side that if you give them a little bit of an inch like Talbot did with the Rovers last week, they'll take it.
Yeah, we know Clayton Scoble's teams are just going to fight it out to the final siren. And yeah, I wouldn't like to be a Talbot player this week down in Trentham.
On talent, Talbot should win this one, but I just don't know. I'm actually going to go with the upset and pick Trentham here.
I'm going to stick with the Hawks, but they better not burn me this week.
Yeah, so I'm happy to be proven wrong, but I just got that feeling about Trentham leading into this ANZAC Day encounter this weekend. Sunday games in the MCDFNL, Campbell's Creek taking on Newstead. Campbell's Creek, full credit to them, and Newstead, big ANZAC Day ceremony on the Sunday as well, taking place in this one. And what's going to follow after that ceremony should be pretty good as well, because as we mentioned earlier in the show, good chance to see where both these two clubs are at after round 1 losses.
Yeah, a bit of another unknown game. Like we said, Newstead might be on the decline a little bit. Campbell's Creek, we don't know a lot about so far. They came up against Lexington round 1. It's pretty hard to judge them against them. I'm going to go with the Kangaroos just based on past form, and that's it.
Yeah, look, I'm actually going with Campbell's Creek on this one. I just feel that they're a very tough side to beat at their home ground. They play their dimensions well. Obviously, Sean Bogue's got them up and going a little bit as well. And read into what you will from last year. They were one of the improved sides last year. 10 goals is probably where they were at last year against Lexington as well, in all seriousness. So it'll be interesting to see what they bring to the table. And I just don't know about Newstead this year at this stage. I think Campbell's Creek at home, in the old early season adage that if you're not sure between two teams, pick the one that's at home.
Yeah, it should be a really interesting game.
Should be indeed. Lexington taking on Maldon this weekend, also on Sunday out at Lexington. Another very interesting game. Obviously, Maldon on the improve. We saw that last week, but Lexington did what they needed to do last week, got the job done pretty well, and are looking fairly ominous again.
Yeah, pretty hard to tip against the Tigers in this one. Maldon have improved, like you said, but I don't know whether they've reached that level where they're going to challenge a Lexington. So the Tigers for me in this one.
Speaking of footy show favourites, could potentially come back into the side. No M. Brown for Lexington last week. How's he looking? Do we know?
No idea. I didn't even know he was going to miss last week, but I'm sure if he gets back in, Lockie Murray won't kick another 5 goals.
No, because Brownie will probably steal 2 of them on the goal square and tap them through himself.
Exactly.
Correct form indeed. Lexington for mine as well, but again, expect a fairly good showing from Maldon in this one. Final game for the round. This is a pretty big one as well. Natty Bialba taking on Avoca up at Natty Yallock. No love lost between these two, and a little bit of spice added into it this year with, of course, Adrian Pilgrim that we broke on the footy show last week, transferring from Avoca to Natty Bialba in the off-season. Pilgrim comes up against his old club.
Yeah, I'm sure the Bulldogs will have that in the back of their mind come Sunday. Pilgs was pretty impressive for the Swans in his debut against Bushy last week.
Yep.
Obviously, I'm going to go with Natty. I think they'll just have a bit too much polish for Avoca.
Yeah, look, I'm thinking Natty as well, but again, it's a hard one because Avoca were pretty good last week against Denali from all reports, and some of their recruits, the Slater boys, Mick Henningsen, are very strong players as well. But look, again, going on that bit of past form, going on what we saw last week, I think I just have to tip Natty to get over the line in this one. That's the MCDFNL Footy Show for another week. Pleasure joining you once again. Thank you for coming on board once again and watching us. Don't forget, if you've got a talking point after the weekend's action that you want us to discuss, send us an email, so send me an email more in particular, Shaun at aflgoldfields.com.au. We'll discuss that as one of our 3 talking points on the show next week. Sammy, thanks for joining us, mate.
Thanks for having me back.
It's an absolute pleasure having you around, and we'll see you, ladies and gentlemen, next week on the MCDFNL Footy Show.